guys, Alec Peirce at the Rancho with another problem for you. Now, there were actually two problems here. The first problem I had was the actual problem, which has to do with the joysticks on my backhoe, my beautiful backhoe. They weren't working properly. I'll explain that in just a moment. But the other problem is that I couldn't find a solution. Normally, I can go to Google, my good friend Google, and enter, hydraulic, backhoe, joystick, whatever, and I get nothing. There's all kinds of hydraulic. There's all kinds of stuff about the spool valves and everything to do with the hydraulics, but there's very little. I couldn't find anything actually to do with the joystick, and the problem was with the joystick. At least I thought it was originally. Let me explain. So I jump in the backhoe the other day, and I'm working away and doing some jobs, and I pull back. You know how this is supposed to work. You pull back on the lever. Right? When you let it goes back to center. Or if you push on the lever, you let it go back center. See, it always centers itself. There seems to be some springs down on there that always bring it back to center. It could move. So on this side over here, I pulled it back to do something. I forget the exact functions now, unless I'm sitting in the seat. I lose track of what the levers do. But anyway, so I pulled back on this lever, this one right here. I pulled back and let it go. It didn't center. It stayed sitting back like this. Now, that creates a couple of issues. First of all, it doesn't center. Well, that's not good. Secondly, if it's sitting back like that, that means that particular spool valve that is controlling at that moment is fully depressed or pulled one way or the other. It's not letting go. It's not coming back. So anyway, long story short, I decided I had to fix it. I called the manufacturer of the backhoe. He didn't manufacture the hydraulics, the spool valves, and so on. To buy them elsewhere, and I mentioned it to him, described it to him, and he said, "Send me pictures and the serial numbers, all the usual junk, And I didn't get much of a resolution from them, to be perfectly frank. I just don't think that they knew for sure what was going on and what to do about it. So anyway, being me, I decided, what the heck, let's take it apart. So if you've looked at these, at your hydraulics, unless you're a hydraulics expert, and I am not, unless you've looked at these hydraulics, it can be very confusing, right? Can you see this down in there, Diana? You see, there's a lot of pipes and fittings and so on. And I understand a lot of that stuff. Each of the spool valves in these two controls is controlled by these levers. The spool valves are controlled by the levers, and each spool valve has two hoses coming to it. One when it's pushed that way, air goes into the spool valve one direction, pull it back, same spool valve, but the hydraulic, goes the other way. And then the same here. So there's two spool valves down in here, but each spool valve has two positions. Shall we say extended and then depressed. So a lot of bits and pieces and parts. There's a lot to it. But I said, what the heck, let's try it. So first thing I did was I took a look at it, and I can see there's a rubber boot. Now, rubber boots to me are there for protection. So I figured, well, I can't see anything with the rubber boot on there, so I pulled the rubber boot off, and that's pretty simple. They have some kind of a clamp on them, usually on the top and on the bottom. There's a clamp, so the rubber boot came off. That was not a big problem. Now, when I looked inside, I don't know if you can zoom in there at all. Diana, can you get in there a little bit? This section right here. I looked inside. First thing I noticed was it's pretty cruddy, dirty. This wasn't it wasn't rusty, not too much rust anyway, bit of moisture in there, but not much, but a lot of junk and dirt in there, which kind of bothered me because it's got a boot on it, and this machine is not that very old, so I'm going to check that boot and make sure the clamps on it are really, really tight. But I was also able to check the operation. Let me just quickly show you what happens. When you push on the joystick, like this, you see right here, there's one spool valve right there. That piece right there is a spool valve. It goes down into the... I get that, yeah. This part right there, you see there? That's coming up and down, up, down, up, down. That is actually the spool valve. It goes down below, and there are two hoses that connect to that spool valve inside there. When it goes up, the hydraulic fluid can go through this hose and do whatever it's supposed to do. When you depress it down, the hydraulic fluid goes through this hose and then to the cylinder to do whatever. Now, there's another one of those over here. This one is sideways. Let me see if I can get a bit of gunk out of there, but of grease out of there and show you. Okay. It's right here. So once again, if I go this way, see it going up? And then you go that way and it goes down, up and down. So this joystick is what it's called, can move this spool valve down or up, or I can move this spool valve down or up. Just that simple. And the actual joystick is held in place by a third little knuckle over here, just to keep it stable, so it doesn't fall off. So anyway, pretty simple. I think it was pretty simple. It looks pretty simple. So the first thing I did was, after getting the boot off, was take the actual stick out, the joystick. And the joystick just screws into this device, this black device. There's a lock nut on it. Yeah, I think that's pretty simple when you get to there. And then you end up with this device, you see. And this device has three Allen bolts on it with lock washers, and they stick out the bottom. Well, those three Allen bolts connect to the spool valves, to the knuckles. One to this knuckle, one to this knuckle, and one to that knuckle, which is just a stabilizer. Now, let me just quickly show you over here. I think I can show you how these actually work, the spool valves, because you can work them now, you see. So take this spool valve, for instance. It will go up like that, you see, and down below, fluid can now flow into your device. Or can I do this? Can I push it down? No, I can't push it down, but trust me, it goes down. And like that, when you turn the joystick the other way. And the same with this one over here. This faces the other direction, but it's the same thing, goes up and down too. And then there's a third mount over here, which is just the mount. So what they look like, those mounts that look just like this. These little, I don't know what they're called, they're like a ball joint. You see that? So one ball joint is over here, like this, held in place with a lock nut, like so. And then this plate sits on top, and one of those bolts goes into it. It's just about that simple. It's really quite a simple arrangement. And then your joystick sits on top, and if you get yours open, if you have a problem, you get yours open, you'll see it's actually pretty simple. There literally is the boot, and then there is the actual stick, and the stick fastens into this round plate. In this case, it's round. I've seen some are triangular, fits into this round plate. And as you move the stick, it moves this round plate around, and that round plate is attached to these. Get one on here for you, if I can. I'm a little bit all thummy today. There, it fastens to this. So when you pull the stick this way, the ball joint goes up, and that bolt goes through the spool valve, as I just showed you, and it pulls it up. So really, it's a pretty simple thing. That's all there is to it. The boot, the stick, this plate, we're going to call it a plate, with its three bolts, and then there are three of these knuckles. Now these two have a threaded bolt on them and a nut, and these are the ones that fasten into those two spool valves, so they can pull up or push down. And the third one is a little bit different. It also has a joint like this, which fastens to the plate, but it fits firmly onto this part right here. It sits right on there, and this joint sits on there, so it doesn't move. This doesn't move. It doesn't go up and down or left and right. It just sits there, and all that does is keep this black plate. I don't know what it's called, the mounting plate. It just keeps it from flopping around. Gives it a point that's stable. So that's stable. So when you pull back, it pushes down on this or that way. So anyway, it's pretty simple once you get in there. Now the spool valves are fine. There's no leaks in here or anything else. However, if you look at, I've got a picture on here, and you'll see that there's some water has gotten into this one. I cleaned it all up. There's a picture. I'm going to put two pictures, before and after. This was all filled with rust and everything else. Now the spool valves were fine. I'm going to solve this problem with the rust. I've checked the boots, cleaned them, and I'm going to put better clamps on them and fill them with good grease, and that should solve that problem. I've explained all the bits and pieces and parts, but I haven't really explained how I solved the problem. Well, when I took the shaft off and took all these parts out, the problem was solved. So I think this spool valve, in other words, goes up and down just perfectly fine. Thank you very much. The spring that makes these center It's actually on the spool valve, down inside the valve. In fact, if you look online, you can find, I'll see if I can find a picture of the spool valve, and they have big springs, sometimes one big spring in the center, sometimes a spring at each end. So the spool valve is always kept in a center position. It's only when the lever pulls it up that it moves. And if you let the lever go, that spring pushes it right back down, or down, and pulls it back up. So the springs that make the center are in the spool valve. And these two spool valves seem to work just perfectly fine. So I think it was just a matter of a bunch of gunk was getting in there. So I pulled the lever back, it got jammed up with grease and dirt, and the spring didn't have enough power to push it back. I'm hoping anyway. The job is done. As you know from the video, I've been working on the backhoe, and specifically on the joysticks. And I'm a little bit frustrated because the design of this joystick, this bellows down here, boot, whatever you want to call it, was not good. And consequently, since the top of the boot is not sealed tightly with a clamp or anything, water gets down inside that boot. If you leave your backhoe outside, which everybody does, I'll be covering mine from now on, this part. Water will get in there. It's inevitable. This backhoe is, I don't think it's 2 years old. And the levers weren't working properly. When I let the lever go, it didn't bounce back like that. I pulled the lever down, let go, it stayed there. And it was sloppy as everything anyway. So I didn't know what was wrong. So I figured I would take it apart, take a look at it, and that's what I did. I didn't realize it's actually a bit of a nuisance job because it's tight quarters and so on. Next time I do this, if I ever do, I've discovered this entire valve system down here. All of these spool valves, I think there's 6 of them. There's 8 spool valves, and all the hoses. I just disconnect the hoses and all quick disconnect fittings and take the whole spool valve out, take it over to the workbench and fix it over there. I didn't know that. So I was trying to do that without taking any more apart than necessary, whatever. So I got it all apart, and what I discovered is that inside these spool valves, there are these ball joints. A ball joint like this. Now there are some pictures. I get a bunch of pictures. I'm going to get Kevin to put a few pictures on. You'll see these ball joints. The ball joint with this nut attaches to the spool valve, pulls the spool valve up and down, depending on what you do with the handle. You see? And that action is so that you move the handle and that pulls this up and down, or it pulls it left and right. So these are pretty critical. And they're neat little devices. They don't look like much, but it's actually pretty neat. Here's the difficulty. Yeah, there's one of them. This one was so badly rusted, so badly corroded, that whatever, let's call it the seal, came off the ball. It's not supposed to come off the ball. The ball and the yoke are a single unit. Once they're assembled, they don't come apart. Everything's there. And there's other signs of corrosion as well, and several of these. So, simple. I try to do things done, over with, don't have to worry about it again. So, there are 6 of them in there. I replaced all 6 of them. It's taken me a while. Mind you, a lot of that time I was waiting for parts. They're not easy to find. You can't find these, generally you have to go to the dealer and he has to order them, and they cost a small fortune. Anyways, I got them all done, got them all back together. But what I also did was, if you zoom in here a little closer, Guy, you'll be able to see that I cleaned with acetone. I cleaned off the mating surfaces of the inside of the boot and on the steel top and the bottom, and I put some RPV goop, if you want to call it, on there, sealant on them, and then I put the boot on, and then I used a CV joint clamp. Small CV joint clamp on the top and a little large one on the bottom to pull that tight. So hopefully that'll prevent any more water from ever going in there. It's the way it should have been designed in the first place, but it wasn't. So hopefully that'll do it. However, I am not going to let this lay around for 3 or 4 years to find out. First of all, I'm going to get this covered, just this portion. I don't care about the rest, but this portion is going to have a cover. It goes down and it fastens on firmly so it doesn't come out, keep the rain and so on out of it. And then every 2 years or so, I will take it apart. Won't take me long. I have to take a look inside to be sure. If it's good, great, I'm a hero. I'll re-grease it, put the boot back on it, and on we go. I do not want to have to replace these again. There are 6 of them, 6 in total. They're $30 a piece. Do the math. That's $200. Yeah, plus I got extra nuts and bolts and some extra luck. Well, anyway, the bottom line, by the time we got this finished with some shipping charges and tax and so on, this job was $400. Yeah. And all because the manufacturer didn't have the foresight to put a little clamp around this boot to keep water from going in down inside there. Now, somebody will say, well, keep it really well greased. You can't get in there to grease it, not easily. You can use a needle, I guess, and you still can't see in there. So I've got it greased now. I used a really, really good quality waterproof black lithium grease. They work smoothly and perfectly, and I'm going to get it back together and get back on the road. But there's just something for you to think about and to watch out for those. Check your own boots and your own machinery, your backhoe, your skid steer, whatever it happens to be, and make sure that there's not water getting in there. And if you find that these are getting stiff to turn, or not springing back the way they should, centering, and then get in there. It's really not that bad a job. It's a big job for me because I've never done it before. Next time it'll take me a few hours. Anyway, guys, lots of fun. Talk to you soon. Alec Peirce at the ranch. Get this panel back on and get my backhoe back outside with the cover. Yeah. Bye-bye.